with businesses, with people, consumers. Maybe other people can also get enriched with the kind of deep dive into situations and topics we do. So around 2017, we started DIVE as an experiment at NCL, Venture Center, and we used to have these offline events. Then came COVID, and we went online. Then we got busy with our work. There was a break. Now we restarted. So welcome to this edition of DIVE. We've discussed from astronomy to genetics to consumer sciences, and today we are discussing education. And as a part of the preparation, there was a very interesting quote I came across, which is Mark Twain. Education is the path from cocky ignorance to miserable uncertainty. We are discussing this miserable uncertainty today in no uncertain terms with some of the pioneers of modern times amongst us, Ajay and Meenakshi Dalmia. Both of them started in 2015 one new initiative called DLRC, some of you are familiar with, in Pune. And now I think it's one of the pioneering institutes of its kind. 2015 when we started also field labs. So I think it's an interesting year when interesting things happen. And I'm sure the journey of any pioneering initiative doesn't remain very smooth, templatized. Everything is, I'm sure, filled with a lot of excitement of its own kind. Thinking of education also, we all have our own opinions on education today. There's nobody who has no opinion on education. I was trying to figure out when did this all schooling started, because I also went through schools, and since Industrial Revolution is supposedly when the modern education started and the templatization started, because we wanted factory workers kind of standardized efficiency. So people have to get to a door, pass the examination, everything standardized, come out. So that kind of the routine or rigor started since then. And as usual will happen, it came from the West. Then came Macaulay, we all know that. To my surprise, I also realized that even if Macaulay didn't come, our school education would be too different from what it is today. Because it was the force of the time that time, going from the Industrial Revolution. It was sweeping the rest of the world. Macaulay became the instrument to bring it here, of course, with some colonial grip. So interesting changes are taking shape, and then came Waldorf and Montessori kind of revolutions, sort of initiatives. And today we are sitting on something bigger, which is the elephant in the room, called AI. So I'm sure DLRC and Ajay and Mona would also be facing this elephant sometime, or maybe every day by now. So let's get on with the discussion, and we'll probably spend around 40 minutes to an hour, and then we'll open the floor for discussion as well. Right? So with this background, let me start with the very story of a little bit of, let's get into the, of course, not everyone is familiar with how it started. I'm sure some of your boards are studying at DLRC, but it will be interesting to know from the beginning what happened. And whenever you start something off the routine, there will be some deep origin, deep inspirations why these things take place. Although both of them carry a lot of experience in education, on sustainability, global experiences, and Ajay also comes from professional consulting background, so I think there's a big overview anyways residing in you, in both of you, of what really happens around the world. So let's start with the first thing, Ajay, to you. What was the AI is sensing something.
The AI in action.
What was the dissatisfaction which what you saw in the system of schooling? Something we all know, but I'm sure there must be some deep driving inspiration behind the entire initiative. Must have been. So, what prompted you to begin with the idea, and when you went ahead, what was the biggest uncertainty you had thought of that time?
See, I would say that whenever we start something, you always have a very romantic idea, and it all started back. I would say our journey for education started when we started volunteering in the US with an organization called Asha for Education. It's really about driving social and economic change through education of the underprivileged. So we got into it, and when we started working with the people on the ground, it really hit us that how much of the work at the ground level is driven by the need to generate employment, and also how much of that is also impact, how much energy plays a big part in that in our daily lives. So okay, so that was in the US, and after that our journey took us from there to India to Singapore and to Bali. And coming back from Bali when we came here, वो एक दिमाग में जुनून था, and it was also like a midlife crisis कि अभी ना कुछ करना है. और उस समय it was such a thing कि भी ठीक है ना, एनर्जी के through the medium of energy we will impart education, be it science, be it language, be it SST, be it everything. So we started having small group discussions in Pune around an energy learning center. And obviously क्या मंथन के बाद वो निकला, उसी दौरान our older daughter was in 8th coming into 9th, and she came back and said पढ़ाई में मजा नहीं आ रहा है. Now मतलब imagine in India a child going from 8th to 9th, मतलब वी आर ऑल इन अप इन आर्म्स, राइट, कि अभी तो बोर्ड ईयर है, अभी क्या करेंगे, बच्चा ऐसा बोल रहा है, वी हाथ पाँव मारो, देखो कहीं कुछ नहीं मिला. तो बोला ठीक है तुम अपने आप पढ़ो, बिकॉज वी हैड द एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ कैम्ब्रिज एंड ओपन लर्निंग. सो जब वो 1 साल पढ़ी ना, उसमें उसकी तो पता नहीं कितनी पढ़ाई हुई, हमारी पढ़ाई शायद उससे ज्यादा हुई उसको सपोर्ट करने के लिए. एंड दैट देन गिव अस आइडिया कि अगर उसको ऐसी जरूरत है, सो देयर मस्ट बी अदर किड्स हु आर इन द सेम बोट, which gave birth to DLRC at that point in time. And our romantic idea was, स्कूल जो है ना हम हफ्ते में 3 दिन चलाएंगे और 2 दिन ना बच्चे अपने आप पढ़ेंगे. That was the romantic idea. वो धीरे धीरे वो 1 महीने में that got shattered. वैसे नहीं, वो तो करना तो पूरा ही पड़ेगा कि उस समय ये आइडिया था यार 3 दिन हम यहाँ करेंगे, 2 दिन हम अपना काम करेंगे.
No, for a whole year we actually did that. Yeah.
So that was the romantic idea, and then I would say things changed as we evolved, and the answer, see, we would say that when we started, I would say we didn't think कि हम कहाँ पहुँचेंगे. So there was no such thing as uncertainty at that point in time. Yes, it was there people in the Pune region, because homeschooling was quite popular. There were other initiatives going on, and people kept saying क्या कर रहे हो, ये ऐसे नहीं होता है, ये नहीं चलेगा, don't do it, it will fall down. Said okay, चलता है. We had enough reserves to say okay, we'll experiment for a couple of years, नहीं चलेगा तो we can go back. Well, we have never looked back since.
Also because it helped, because by the end of the first year we had 8 kids enrolled. Yeah. And then we started the second year with 25 kids and ended the second year with 50 kids. So that kind of gave us a lot of conviction in what we were doing, and 50 kids is a big number for a small organization like us, and especially because both of us were completely new to Pune. We didn't know anyone. So from that point of view, I think it was a very big leap for us. Yes. I think, yeah.
And I would say that while she has an education background, I'm an accidental educator. I tripped into it because of, I would say, our work with the Asha for Education, and also because while I was working in the professional world, I used to be a process engineering and change management. So it was constant education of this C-suite. And that is how I fell into the education, and then because of our daughter.
So something you want to do pioneering, you should have a plan B. Interesting. As long as we keep thinking of what else can happen, sometimes things don't move forward. All right. So starting is easy. Getting started is easy because a deep moment of inspiration always get us kick started on anything, from making a new dish to starting a new school. It's always easy.
True.
The soup happens in the middle. Sustaining it, and that's where the lot of challenges come in, and it's not just challenges of one kind. It's never probably some buffers were there, so I'm sure finances initially was not an issue. Must be regulation, must be parents, must be content, curriculum, all kind of things. So, what kind of after the initial courage, I would like to ask you, Mona, after going from the initial kick starting, what really you went through, and how did you sustain it for so long?
Right. So, whenever you're innovating something, there's never a blueprint. I think that's a biggest challenge in any new organization. So we had nowhere to look for solutions, and we had to always create our own solutions. So that's been really the strong learning curve for us, from operations to how the curriculum would look like, or even the admissions protocol. Right? We could not follow something as simple as, okay, let's just take down how children are admitted into schools, things like that. So from starting the idea to enrolling to having all these children, in the first 2 years, we had really, it was happening so organically that we were growing with the flow. Really, okay, whatever is happening, let's just accept it. And we were happy, we were really happy. We used to have classes. We were in a bungalow, and we used to, all the rooms of the bungalow, we shifted them, converted them into some kind of a classroom. So what's the first thing that comes to our mind when you have to create a classroom? A big writing board. So every classroom, we fixed the writing boards to make sure that the kids. But then how to make it work, because we had children, we started with grade 9, 10, because that's where Anjali was at the time, and we had more kids in 9th and 10th, and we had a few kids in grade 2 and 3, and then we had like one or two kids throughout the grades. To make it work was a very big challenge, because even though, like, I'm a trained educator, I have my masters in education and all of that, but nothing seems to work when you're actually on the ground, right? All the theory evaporates, uh, all of that. So huge learning. We did a lot of things as they came, honestly. When we shifted to the farm, now we are on a big farm. That's when we realized now we have to put things down. So we started a little bit documenting the admission process, for example. How are we going? What kind of parents will walk in through those doors? Obviously, not every parent will walk in through that door, right? Because DLRC is a very different type of concept. Plus, we're not a registered school. I think that also is can be challenging for many people to think about putting their children through a system that does not ensure a CBSE or a known kind of a thing. So right, so although those were never really big challenges in our mind, because our daughter went through that and it was really seamless, but that was always one big challenge. A lot of conversations had to have with the parents to convince them about why they should bring their children to DLRC. Lot so one thing we started doing was open houses. Open houses allowed for them the opportunity and a place where they could come in. They could meet us, because even today when people come in through those doors, they all say that they come in for us more than anyone else, because the rest of the team for them is a transient team, correct? So for us, it was always a very big thing to keep upskilling ourselves, keeping that level of skill and knowledge and all of that, like really really high, and with the system, with the time. That was really important. Slowly and steadily, we did develop various things, but the biggest challenge was to develop the curriculum, because there wasn't a curriculum that we wanted to follow. We were very clear that we did not want to follow any one philosophy or one pedagogy. Uh, just because I think the way we both think, it's very difficult for us to put things in a bucket. We like to think as we go a lot of times, and that's why creation happens, right? Because you're thinking of a solution just like that. So for us, I don't think we would have been successful at all if we had followed any one particular pedagogy. So then people usually ask us, so what philosophy do you follow, or what pedagogy? And we have to say it's more like common sense in education. What comes intuitively. That's intuition is very, very important. We've learned over the years, and it's not just off the fly intuition, but intuition that comes with a lot of deep understanding of how children learn, or how teachers work, or how systems work. So systems thinking is something that I understand very well, at least I think. So to be able to put that together was a very useful way of bringing DLRC to where we are. Even today, when people say, let's document everything, it's the 11th year, let's document everything. I was like, yes, you can document everything, but I can literally guarantee you everything will change next year. So that change is the only constant we've experienced at DLRC.
If this was in the western part of the hemisphere,
Yeah.
there would have been 5 frameworks out by now.
Yeah, of course, maybe.
And franchisees all over the places.
Perhaps.
So, what has remained constant from the original vision, what you had from the moment of inspiration? What has remained constant, and what has really gone to the other extent now, by now?
I think what's remained constant is our commitment to inclusivity and to bring equity in the field of education. I think that remains constant, and we are constantly working every single day. What is one thing, if we've done, then we've been successful, is that we provided an equitable platform for every child to learn. I think that's a constant thing. Now, see, this is the what of the thing, right? What may remain constant, but the how and the why will always change. And it should change. Because if it doesn't change, then we'll be stuck somewhere, right?
Apart from the inclusivity also,
yeah.
in terms of the entire format of education, the experiential education,
Yeah.
what part of that has remained constant?
Yeah. So our commitment to also bringing their philosophy at head, heart, and hand stays constant. So every lesson, every interaction must bring in that element of experiential learning. So when we employ the head, the heart, and the hands, then we are bringing experiences to the children, and that remains constant.
So I'm imagining that there are people who are not familiar with DLRC here. Can you give some example of this head, heart, and hands? What really happens? Any example you can give that it's different from other schools like this?
Yeah, do you want to go?
Sure.
I can. Okay. Yeah. So I'll give you examples. It starts with planning. Okay. So I personally believe that we are only as good as we plan. So it starts with planning the yearly curriculum. It begins, and then what is followed is, okay, this is the content, right? Now all of us everywhere, we are all focusing on the content. But what we want to work on is shifting from the idea of delivering content to moving to delivering concepts or facilitating concepts. So this is a really big shift. Now, how to do that is always the big thing. What we do on a regular basis is try to bring the ownership of learning to the children. So defronting the classroom is one thing that we do constantly. We endeavor to do that, strive to do that all the time, is to bring the learning to the learner, to bring the ownership to the learner. And that takes a lot of planning, because all the facilitators also who work at DLRC, they come from regular school systems, and they have their B.Ed, M.Ed, or maybe not, but then to work with them constantly to make them see why that is so important, and why if we bring more learning as an ownership to the children, then more experiences can be created. How, and also having this conversation of how we can make education an experience versus the delivering of content. I think that is where the head, heart, and hand comes in. So, for example, we have the design lab where all the concepts in the sciences that are being facilitated are then brought in through working with the hands, yes, by the kids. And we have the farm. So, all of the sciences, literally, you can teach everything you want to teach through growing vegetables. So, we do that. Then we have so that is so this is one thing we developed this year, environment literacy. We believe that environment education is the most important education than any other education, because if we are environmentally literate, then we can manage everything else, right? But we could be the best in we could be a math genius or a physics genius, but if we don't know how to interact with our environment, then we aren't going too far. So there are several such opportunities throughout the day where children are working with their hands to do handwork, painting, art, taking care of the farm, making things in the design lab, singing songs, the heart element, singing songs, being having morning circles where they're singing together, they're taking care of each other, they're taking care of the farm, they're taking care of the school. The head, of course, is learning the concepts, the content also. So a lot of planning that goes behind the scenes. Yeah.
Let me add one more example to
Yes.
what you said. Is a very classic example. We will have this problem even in our houses or factories, that you have a water tank
Yeah.
on the top. And today what happens is that somebody would go and turn the motor, tank will fill in the water, and we sit right where the water overflows. Right? So now that is, A, it's a waste of resource. B, it is definitely not what we want to see falling. So now this is a classic problem. Now if I tell our technician or electrician, he will fix it within a couple of hours. He'll get something, a gizmo, electrical gizmo, and he'll put it there. This can be turned into a very good problem which engages all the three elements of the head, heart, and the hand. They will need to apply some concepts of physics and to figure out, okay, what is it that is causing it to overflow and what can be done. So what is the problem? And so first do that. Now the next thing is, okay, now what kind of, so we tell them specifically that first attempt is to use a mechanical solution, then you can come to an electrical solution. So as they start doing it, they will have to go and find some equipment, find some tools to market and do that. That engages their hand. Once they have put a system together, they start testing it, which is a prototyping, right? They are going through this experimental cycle. The next thing is, okay, somebody is going to use it. So who is that interface? So the human element comes into play. So as you see in developing this solution, as much as they are learning the concepts, they are also learning how to engage their hand and think of the person who's going to interact, which is the heart. And that is where the learning really comes alive. And once that happens, you have created enough curiosity in the kids to pull the learning, as opposed to educators we trying to push the learning down.
Yeah. So one thing that we'll be doing in this regard from next year is we already do some part of it, but majorly as a big pedagogical shift, we are going to be working on creating concept labs. So, for example, there's going to be the science labs, as we all are familiar with, but not just like that. There are going to be labs where equipment, apparatus, various other things are available to the kids. We start the lesson with a problem and then we move into the lesson. Currently, what we usually do is that we feed all the content and then we tell the children to now solve problems. That's a very, very standard way of learning in our systems. Everywhere, globally, that is how it is. But we want to now shift it to starting with a goal. What is the purpose of my learning today? That is going to be the focus, followed by experimentation, followed by whatever follows, where more peer-to-peer work is happening, students working with students versus the teacher. There's the concept of teacher we want to remove, because with the advent of AI, I mean, I don't know if there's a follow-up question maybe, but maybe I can wait on that. There's big AI is there. So we have this big AI, of course. So like this, we have this bicycle concept, right?
Yes.
We were talking about it yesterday. So how should we look at AI? How should we look at AI in our schooling, in our lives, and all of that? So AI, if you can consider AI as a bicycle, if we were to walk a distance with our feet using only our legs, we walk so far, it's going to take us time. If you look at AI as a bicycle, it can help to facilitate our the journey a little bit faster. But we'll still have to pedal with our legs, no? So we can consider that, like we can look at AI like that.
Let me come to the AI
Yeah.
part slightly later, but I think it's important to realize that a school which is unregistered,
Yeah.
trying to make kids go up and see why the water is leaking or overflowing and then get a solution done. And the parents subscribing to this philosophy of doing things by themselves, children playing with, getting to know animals that, okay, black cow is different from a buffalo. I think it also speaks of the society coming of an age where people are ready to
Yeah.
put their bet on a very experimental concept like this and continue to be with it. I'm sure it had its own challenges on the way, negotiations and kind of questions you must have faced. I'm sure multiple kinds. Feel free to speak on them later on.
We face those questions today also.
Yeah, every day.
I think the one question which is a favorite when we do open houses with the new parents. Okay, so this is all good on paper. You guys are doing great, but so there's always a but, right? But how will my child be competitive ready to face the world out there?
Will they get admitted into colleges?
Yeah, all those standard questions, right? So we very take a pause and we ask them. So, okay, tell us, what does it take in your child to be competitive? It comes from them naturally. The child needs self-confidence and the drive, motivation. I said, great. I said, you've answered my question. I said, what we do is to create that confidence and the motivation that tomorrow if your child wants to appear for a competitive exam, they will have a focus, they will have a goal, and they will go after it like a bull with a cloth on it, right? And then they say, yes, we see it. But I would say, come back to the challenge, like you had asked earlier, right? What are the challenges? So when we started small, like Mona said, we had this mixed age group kids, and that worked wonders because the younger kids learning with the older ones and the older ones with the younger ones. And with any growth, what happens is that as you grow a little bit and you get a bit more kids of a similar age, somehow the learning then becomes a bit more compartmentalized. And the learning that was happening across ages starts to wither away. And that is one thing when we look at education future. It is going to shift to where we started at earlier. And we need to experiment. And that is where I think what Mona said is about when we start doing problem-based learning, it will automatically shift in that direction where now you're solving problems as opposed to just doing exercises or learning a concept.
One more challenge that we constantly face is finding the right people in the organization. So, teachers prefer to work in well-known familiar spaces also, right? Coming to DLRC stretches them into their zone of proximal development. You might have heard of Vygotsky's thing of, there's a comfort zone and then there's a zone where you're stretching yourself. So not everybody is able to take that. It requires a lot of hard work. So that is another challenge we constantly have. And then even when we do get people, is to work with them constantly to make sure they understand what is it that we are trying to do. So that is also a challenge, of course. Yeah, they will always be there.
Yeah, finding people
Yeah.
fitting into a new experimental setup,
Absolutely.
which cannot be called a startup, is
Correct.
difficult.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
you're called a startup, then it's easier.
Now we can't call it a startup
If you're
anymore.
called a funded startup, even easier.
Well, but for that, like today, when parents ask, is it, will it work? We tell them, look, this is our 11th year. 200 students have already graduated and are out in the universe, both in India and abroad. So I said, if you had asked us 10 years ago, you could have said that yes, it's an experiment.
There was a parent actually, it's very interesting. When we were still in the bungalow, there was this one parent who sat us both down and said, "You tell me that you're going to be in business for the next 5 years." And we said, "No, we can't promise you." That was just like in our second year. Like second year had just started. He had two sons. They had two children, two boys, and they were both very young at the time. Of course, the younger one was in grade 3, and the older one was in grade 2 and 3. And they said, "We want to put our children with DLRC, but we want to ensure that you're going to be there for the next 5 years." And we said, "We can't promise you anything. So, but we are committed." And their kids went through the entire schooling, and both of them, the older one graduated last year from grade 12, and the younger one's graduating this year. So, it's amazing. And they've been the longest parents with that much trust and conviction in us.
So
Yeah.
let's focus now slightly towards the other part of the story, that how do we go forward from here? It's been a great journey so far, of pioneering journey of trying to get into a new idea and convincing people to invest in the idea with their heart and soul, literally. Going forward, I think everyone is asking the same question in every field, and we all have anxieties of future. In fact, I was talking to, as a part of our innovation practice at Student Labs, an NGO reaches, sort of NGO. They train schools in very experimental format in suburban rural area. They take over schools and the entire IT world meltdown right now, which is happening, is hitting home at 8th and 9th standard. What will happen to our children? This is from Telangana story, where the concerns about IT and US market are probably 10x of what parents undergo. Then computer science, that too not other engineering, computer science and the job scenario, that guides them throughout. So these people have reached out that parents are very anxious right now of the kids. That what trajectory, because it was known so far that kid goes through the journey and here's the route charted out, and graduates, takes up a job in IT company and lives happy, manageable, lot of dowry. But that's a part of the society we live in. Now a lot of things are melting off, so there is a lot of anxiety. So this is probably anxiety across the board, not just Telangana now. Future of jobs, and this will recraft our way we look at schooling also very soon. Because if you experiment too much, then the question becomes even larger: that what will happen to my kid later on? On the other side, so bottom level jobs are going off. Other side, the shift in the cognitive pattern of how child is now behaving is happening, because more and more answers are now ready-made. Assignments are ready-made right now. Our own interview pattern, when we recruit people, and we used to give them exercise. Now exercise results in cut and paste answers. I'm sure this is happening in homeworks and a lot of other things. So I think this is a question I'm sure you are dealing on more intensely at everyday basis with parents and with children. What kind of assignments to give, how to look at their minds developing skills. Like we are probably at the same question when calculators came. What will happen to our way of calculating things, which my forefathers could do it in a flicker, and I take a while or don't do it at all. So something is shifting in the cognitive patterns. Uber shifted our attentiveness or waiting period. So I'm sure something is happening. So what's with this? The entire AI stuff. How do you see things going forward? What will change in your pedagogy at school? Maybe Ajay, you can start, and then Meenakshi can join. What do you see shifting from this?
She used to work for a company called Pitney Bowes. Pitney Bowes is a US-based company which is into mail and document management. And when email and this video conferencing all came, as we all know, everything was predicting that the paper will go out of circulation, People will be just communicating via email. People will not fly anymore, and all those things. Right? Pitney Bowes continues to exist even today. It's a 100-plus-year-old company. It still thrives because I would say this: any of this technology, be it AI, is a tool, and as educators, I would say that our role now is to see how to use the tool to make learning better as opposed to using the tool to finish like assignment or whatever is the case. So I give a simple example is about I facilitate history and sociology. So when we give assignments, a topic for them to write, we tell them specifically that I would like to see you having done a research on 3 different AI engines as a part of your assignment, and from that would like you to consolidate and come up with your reasoning and your justification for your response to the question. See, now that brings in critical thinking, that brings in your ability to discern according to your own values and your thinking as to what makes sense to that question. And the beauty of Cambridge questions is that they ask you those kinds of questions. It is not a straightforward question. So that is a good classic example of how to use and how to prepare students. So critical thinking and discernment or judgment. So for example, another example from the math side, we tell students, and they are allowed calculators in the higher grades. So if there is a question about 19 multiplied by 18, and if the calculator spews out, let's say 480 or something, and the students write it, yeah, because the calculator is saying that is the truth. Now the question is there to the student is to build that faculty of reasonableness, judgment. Okay, can you estimate, will it be more than 400? Kids don't ask that. The question is, okay, 20 times 20 is 400. So it cannot be more than 400 because it is less, both are less than 20. So that kind of faculty to develop. So the math is not about doing the numbers, but the math is about saying estimation, judgment. It's about saying, okay, does this make sense to me? And that is, I would say, from the faculty to develop the facilitators to see that and guide the children accordingly on the spot is the most important thing, I would say, where education is headed in terms of. So when we talk about our head, the head part is no longer about delivering content. It is about delivering critical thinking and judgment or discernment. Right? Heart is about really empathy. And so hand is about developing those skills. And that is really where AI cannot replace. AI will not be the plumber who will come and fix your, if it is leaking, or your electrical work, or your carpentry. So that is how we see where we will need to evolve from where we are today to where it ought to be.
Ability to question, ability to judge, and I have collected a lot of quotes on this, but I think I can read out before we go to Mona. J. Krishnamurti says on this education, he's spoken elaborately on this. True education is to learn how to think, not what to think. If you know how to think, if you really have that capacity, then you're a free human being, free of dogmas, superstition, ceremonies, and therefore you can find what religion is.
Yeah.
So I think but free thinking creates a lot of questions.
Yes.
And a lot of questions the world doesn't like.
Yeah, you are so right, and I would say that is why we tell our facilitators, or sorry, our students, is that if you as a student don't make us as a facilitator uncomfortable, that means you are not doing your job, because you are not helping us be in that zone of proximal development, because we need to be there to stretch ourselves so that we can stretch you to learn more. And I think that is really where it should.
You have something to add?
No, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's another topic is I think I heard from you that you had recently gone to Ministry of Education. They wanted to see your opinion on homeschooling, which is an emerging phenomena in the world and in India as well.
In India, more in India.
In India as well, and I see that now people put children to school because also I read that in the industrial revolution, if both parents are working, children need to be given some structured way of getting engaged somewhere. But if the parents are at home, working from home, there is time available, and probably I think the homeschooling will catch up. So, what did you guys tell Home Ministry on this? Oh, sorry,
The
Ministry on
education.
this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, no, it wasn't like that, that they were asking us what they should do. I don't think that was the intent. But we were invited by the NEPA, which is the division of education ministry, because they were trying to get, they invited 30 alternate spaces to Delhi in November to kind of brainstorm on what more can be done and how to implement NEP. You know that the National Education Policy was out in 2020. So from practice to from policy to praxis, right, which is implementation, that is the most difficult part. Writing down the NEP was not the most difficult part. So but we keep hitting roadblocks, right? So when we went there, uh, we were very nervous because we were expecting like some large body of people, but it wasn't like that. They had broken it up. So we were working with, so I think approximately 25 other such spaces were there, and we were there. It was a fabulous opportunity for us to talk about DLRC on such a national platform, because even in when we had the G20 summit, they had invited me to come and talk about the importance of informal third space literacies. And that time, I think it was a wonderful way to begin to think about why such spaces are really, really important in today's context, especially in today's context. Because even when with the industrialization began our schooling system, right? Because we were trying to create similar thinking people who could work in the factories. But then that model continued for a really long time because very few people could think beyond that. And whoever thought beyond that, like Krishnamurti hai, Montessori, Waldorf, all of these people thought about education, how it should be different. This is what I say spaces like DLRC and other such spaces are doing. We are thinking, we are breaking the boundaries, and we are thinking differently, which is what is important, because we are able to show possibilities. I think this is what we spoke about in the G20 summit also, and this is what we spoke about at the National Education Policy meet also. That, like what we are doing, for example, when we were talking about how AI impacts learning for a very small thing, but we've gone beyond that now, right? I mean, it's okay, it's there, we know it's there, but we can't be stuck there. We have to go beyond and see how learning can happen for children beyond all of that. So spending 7 hours in a classroom, it should be enough. So we no longer will be giving homework which something they can copyright. A small shift, like these small shifts, they make a lot of difference, and these were our input into the the education, which they really appreciated, because not many spaces are thinking like that. We are still thinking about how important homework is, but really, how important is homework? What does homework even do for children? They're spending 7 hours in the school, and then they're going home. And oh, I sorry, I thought my phone was on silent. I put it on flight mode, actually. uh, so those kind of things. What we really enjoyed learning at the education meet was that there are so many different types of education spaces who are thinking really amazingly about education. But at the bottom of it all is really about equity. So I keep bringing this again and again. Why are we thinking about education so much? Because we want to make sure that every child gets the education that they deserve. So that is why even I just came back last night from a very large conference which was happening in Bangalore from Leadership for Equity. That's an organization, it's a Pune based organization, but they collaborated with the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore to hold this conference, and there were several people. I was just there as a bystander, and we were talking about you will so any idea how many kids go to school in India? Any numbers? Anybody wants to give it a try? सोचो तो
Go to school.
Go to school. What is India's population?
Graduation. Anyway,
हाँ.
graduates, yeah.
So about 250 billion children actually today are enrolled in schools.
Okay, so the number becomes half by the time they graduate. Or maybe
That
lesser.
Even
yeah,
less than
but
that.
60% of them, at least 60% of them, are enrolled in government schools. Yeah, and only about 30 to 35% are enrolled in private schools. Correct. So, and there's a very big difference between how government schools operate and how private schools operate. And these are the discussions that happen at the education ministry level, is that, there is such a difference in everything, in how education is perceived, how education is conceived, and how education is brought to the children, right, in all levels. Now, in small stories, right, there are children who can't even go to school, several reasons, because they have no parents at home or they are working to manage their families. There can be multiple number of reasons because of which so many children are not going to school, right? So then how to bring education to them is another very beautiful concept. You might have heard of doorstep school. So that's exactly what they did. Rajani Paranjpe, she is also Padma Shri awardee. She thought about this 30 years ago and said, if children can't come to schools, let schools go to them. So these are the kind of models we should be looking at. So equity is such a my favorite word, particularly because I think unless we bring equity, which means, so there's a difference between equality and equity. Equality is if I want to go see a soccer match, and I'll take myself, I'll take my children, and I'll take my helpers' children to see the soccer match. That's called equality, right? Equal opportunity, or not equal opportunity, but an equal platform. No, okay, an equal opportunity. But if you all go there, and if I get to sit, if I can see it, but another child can't see it, or the person I've taken along can't actually see the game, then it is no good taking them there. So just bringing schools out there is no good if we can't provide for every child. That's the main point. Yeah, so that is what we were talking about at the education meet.
So maybe before we open up to audience as well, Ajay, for you, one final question is that if you had to think of a school all over again, DLRC in 2035, apart from making it equity centered, what else would you do differently from what you have already done so far? If anything, one element you would like to do that differently, looking at that reality of those years where AI would have pervaded, robots would be doing the basic cleaning of handling, gatekeeping, etc.
See, so I would come at that question by looking ahead as to where we see education happening or going in the next 10 years. Is with the rapid advent of the AI, I would say the focus is on how do you build human intelligence. Right? AI is there. Now, when we talk about HI, it is really about saying, okay, after all, students and us, we are all social beings. We have a deep desire to connect. We have a deep desire to be heard. So the question is, how do you inculcate that through the education system? जब मेरे को when parents come for open houses, they ask me all kinds of questions about the curriculum syllabus. We ask them one simple question: why do you believe kids come to school? Adults in their life want them to study. Children come to school because they want to play and have fun.
Socialize.
Socialize. They want to make friends, they want to play, they want to do that. So that means that the learning has to be such that they are engaged and they are enjoying in the process. So now, if I connect the AI, if you connect the AI to the learning, so we believe that the spaces like DLRC would become more like a series of labs, different kinds of labs. It could be a soil lab, it could be something to do with, like we have a design lab for carpentry, or multiple labs where children would come to work in those labs, solve problems, and the content part, AI would take care of it at your house. Even AI, the tools will come where the AI would be tracking your child's progress in terms of how much concepts have you learned, where are you. There'll be enough tools to test those. But the fact of interacting with human beings, other child, other adults, being able to work with your hands to solve problems, those spaces are not there enough. So to your question, if we have to redo DLRC, we will have a whole bunch of different areas of labs where you can actually apply your mind and your hand. And when I'm solving problems, I'm not doing it alone. I'm collaborating with you, right? You will have a view, I will have a view, we'll bang heads and we'll come up with something. So Steve Jobs had said that, look, if you're not having disagreements, if you're not having friction, that means that you're not getting polished. So friction and disagreements need to happen in the learning space by design, not just leave it to happen, such that that diamond can come out, learning can happen, and we can grow as human beings.
School as immersive labs is a very interesting take. How the entire labs will be democratized, trickle down, reaching to the kids, and kids get to interact, and the learning happens at home. I think it's a wonderful direction. So with this chit chat, the ground shifts to the folks who are here. Please feel free to raise any questions you have. Yes, please, sir.
Wonderful answer, and congratulations once again, because every year you treat it as a startup.
Thank you.
Coming from the space of any Indian parent, they would definitely like to see their children employed,
Uh-huh.
if not an entrepreneur. So either employed or an entrepreneur. I'm just trying to look at the bridge: education, skill, and employment. Okay. So when I look at the entire employment is ideally bifurcated into functional skills or technical skills, where all our AI and everything is going to come. The other side is probably the human skills. Now, how do you see, or do you categorize a list of human skills or technical skills, which probably we are embedding at the root of the education itself, so the bridge becomes?
Who's the question to or open?
So this was actually a very big question in the conference yesterday, where we were talking about life skills versus 21st century skills. Correct? So we were just, so there was a very wonderful panel of, there was an IS officer, there was an educator from the UNICEF as well, and we were all trying to talk about how. So at that point, it was something that we also shared, that we have to understand what is life skill and what is 21st century skill. Life skill is something that helps us to live our life on a day-to-day basis. Now, what are some of those skills? What is one thing that we are all doing right now also is communicating, for example, right? Communication is a skill that was needed 50 years ago, 1000 years ago, will always be needed. So that's a life skill, right? Then what's another life skill is a resilience, right? So we will always have problems in our life. We always had problems in our life, right? But to be able to navigate them and then to stand again is resilience. So several such things that help us to live our life to the fullest are all life skills. Now, 21st century skills or any century skills are all evolving skills, right? Even when we first had, when computers came, when calculators came, right? Even before that, or even when the printing press came, right? In 1700s, we all had to learn some new skills to help us use those technological things as well as move ahead, right? That's what's happening now. So there's nothing new about it, right? So when the calculator came, we had to learn new skills. When the computer came, we had to learn new skills. When the internet, it was a big thing. Now AI, so we will have to learn new things. Now what we say as 21st century skills are also in many ways things that are really fundamental also, again, like being able to collaborate. It's a very very big 21st century skills. It's labeled as a 21st century skill, but when was collaboration not required? It was always required, right? We decided to compete versus collaborate, but we always had to collaborate at some point. So now we will have to do more of that because competition is going to take a back seat. Competition no longer exists. Who are we competing with? No one except ourselves. This is becoming more and more true every single day. Yeah. So when we met, both of us had gone to this one place called Khamgaon last week, and there's a school called Creators International. It's run by a scientist, almost a scientist, Mr. Rahman, who was working at TIFR in Mumbai, and he said, according to him, our JEE, NEET, etc., all competitive questions are substandard questions.
Yeah,
Didn't he say that?
yeah, he said.
He
And I
said,
was
what
like,
kind
what?
of questions are we even giving to children? For these questions, they have to go for tuitions, etc. They're not even worth it. So
Why
think,
not worth it?
because he said, what did he talk
Yeah,
about?
so he was saying that these questions that they come in this competitive exams, they require a certain pattern that you know,
it's only pattern
and you can
recognition.
apply that.
Yes,
He
it's
said
only
it is,
pattern
it is
recognition
not about problem solving.
or critical thinking. It's about correct.
Right.
Yeah. So, and also from process of elimination. So he said, why do children go for tuition classes or to competitive to these places? Because they need to learn the pattern. He said, if you truly want to understand the cognitive level of people, you need to assess them for problem solving skills or critical thinking skills. So,
So and
Yeah.
I would add to
Yeah.
that is the reason why something is called a problem is because it does not have a solution or it doesn't have a set method. So you need to build upon your prior knowledge, जो हम we all do in our work every day. जब कोई
Yeah.
problem आती है, we build on our prior knowledge to solve it. And the children, and if the work space requires that, education should follow that, right?
Yeah.
Education should be ahead of that, actually, is to train children how to solve problems. So I would say to your question, that bridge is as long as kids learn how to solve problems and they have built that human intelligence, I would say that it is very possible even today. And there's an article by companies out there saying that nowadays the companies are preferring, and even the graduates are preferring, that कल्चर जो है ना, हम आते हैं ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, कल्चर मैच नहीं हो रहा है, इट इज नॉट व्हाट वी वांट, एंड दे लीव आफ्टर 6 months और अ ईयर एंड दे से लुक, हमको इतनी सिक्योरिटी नहीं चाहिए, आई विल गो एंड डू माय ओन स्टार्टअप where I will drive what it is. So, and companies are saying, look, we want people with more skills. तुम्हारे डिग्री कोई काम की नहीं है, because my technical skill जो मेरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, I will have to train you anyway. So what organization is looking for, saying, okay, are you quick to learn? Can you communicate? Can you be empathetic with somebody? Can you understand them? Now these are the skills.
So
Don't
I'll
get
add
taught.
to that, where the problem comes from. Can you even think what is it that drives the pedagogy? What is it that, can any of you think and tell me? What drives how we teach in the classes?
That's a very good question.
What is currently driving all pedagogy in the classroom?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you wish.
Okay, yeah. Okay, you know what it is? It is the assessment. It is the assessment. Our assessments drive our pedagogy. Okay, so if you're a SSC student, state board student, the type of questions that will come in your board exam will, what you will appear for board exam in grade 10 is how you will be taught in grade 1 onwards. So who was Shivaji Maharaj? When was he born? Where did he live? What was his mother's name? This type of question is what will be in right now versus how did Shivaji Maharaj help build the so right then you have to think about it like that. So we are actually all our schooling system, we are preparing our children to appear for exams. That's it, right? So if we want a shift, then we have to shift our assessment criteria and the way we assess our children.
I think this is one beautiful thing that Mona said even this year, and there was a bit of unease within even our team. She said that let's do away with the final exam. Why
no,
do
we
do
did
it?
away with the mid-year exams last year. Not
So-
a single parent came and asked us why.
So this year she said let's do away with the final exam because it takes up almost 2 months. पहले आप पेपर बनाओ, फिर उसको कहते हैं उसको बच्चों को एग्जाम दो, उसका चेक करके उसको फीडबैक दो.
You know the reason why we didn't go to school today was because everybody is working on final assessments. All the teachers.
And the funny thing is that final assessment एक बार हो गया, it is all, nobody comes to look back at it.
You fold up those answer papers and you give it to the kids and you don't know what the kids have done. Seriously, it takes away so much of learning time. Yeah.
So it is about rethinking that. So in the sense, instead of doing assessment that way, could assessment happen all along?
It does already in many ways, but how to actually really make it relevant?
Yeah.
Yeah. हाँ हो रहा है, अभी भी हो रहा है. 10th is already taken care of, you know that, right? 10 board exams will not take place from next year. So only grade 12 exams, and that also in the next 5 years they will become redundant because that is not any more any need for that because kids aren't learning that way anymore.
While we are at this, let me give you an example in case you're not familiar. I studied also at the National Institute of Design, NID.
Yeah.
Design education then, I went from engineering to design. So engineering was all that she's discussing right now. Assessments, this, that, problem solving, JE, etc. At NID that time, now it's no longer. That time it was no exams. Courses start from Monday and the course ends on Saturday. Okay, no exams. Either you pass or more work to do. That's the only way things are graded. There is no curriculum.
Yeah.
There is no curriculum. Like largely, color theory needs to be studied. Teacher comes, sits and says, "Can you see on that tree red color on the leaf?" I said, "Where? I can see only green." No, there is red also in that. Now, that is the interaction which is taking place.
Wow.
Okay. And so for me, it was a great shift.
Yeah.
I think that's because now the other ministry has stepped in. Teachers' grades have to be judged in certain ways. Exam systems have come in there also. But many of those principles were applied, and there are people who are doing reasonably okay from that college.
Yeah, it is also a shift. I would say that we talk about change, right? This is a change management and also from our own insecurity as teachers or facilitators. अगर आज हम बोलते हैं कि final exam नहीं होगा, imagine the condition of that teacher or facilitator in the class.
Totally uncomfortable.
अरे
with the idea.
अब मेरे को 2 महीने का content और I have to think.
No.
Right, I have to think. I have to engage the kids for those 2 months. How do I do that?
These are some of the challenges also from your first question is to bring in ideas for them and for them to say, okay, so you know how we work now, we've understood it takes 2 years for a change to actually get integrated into the system.
It's a good timeline to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So we slowly start, I would say, impregnating the change.
Yeah.
All along.
I think mindsets for most of the teachers is I become powerless.
Thank you very much because I lose power.
I think there's another, like although philosophically I completely aligned with this, but the foundational literacy, numeracy numbers are really declining. And like I come from Mumbai, so whenever I've connected with any BMC, like the municipal schools of the area, they've said that because of that lack of fear of assessment that the kids no longer have, no fear of assessment, is why they don't really try hard to learn parakhadi, to learn mathematics, to learn it. Which means that when a philosophy like this, which is so like enigmatic yet very empowering from a perspective of how the society will grow if there are no assessments, there's only relevance that comes towards the end of it. Somewhere that what it is going to affect and how it is going to affect the psychology of learning is also a very critical field that one maybe needs to think also from your experience.
So we are not saying that assessments are going away. What we are saying is that you, instead of doing one assessment or few like assessments, do continuous assessment. Like as you are working on a project or you are working on solving a problem, you see, okay, have you applied this concept here? Do you understand it? So it is more about application and less about knowing that particular thing. So assessment will happen, but the way it happens will be different. Uske liye, the facilitators will have to equip themselves. They will have to also grow. And that is why at DLRC, we find that we have to develop our own facilitators. It's very difficult to find anybody outside any training company who will come and develop our team the way we do.
One more point to that, what is an assessment? एक तरीके से the way we look at it, assessment is a goal, right? It's a goal, no? In a learner's mind, in a child's mind also, मैं कुछ भी whatever I'm doing through, okay, when my exams come, I will study. Why? Because the goal is to pass that exam, right? Now, if we could give, if that is a purpose, I think that's a purpose because all other purposes are missing. And because that purpose becomes very large. But if we can actually provide meaningful purposes for learning, I'm sure children will grab those opportunities even more. So, for example, that is why we are moving a little bit towards more problem-based learning. Because when we start a learning with a problem, there's a goal. What's a goal? That you want to solve that problem, right? Assessment is also a problem only, no? It's something that you want to crack. So you work towards that. So I think the purpose in learning isn't being driven as much as it needs to
Solving
be.
is a problem, right?
Problem solving is a problem.
Yes, thank you.
With your kind of education, what I have observed right now, like listening to you all, right now what is happening, a student, a child will learn probably a dentist thing. Then he or she will decide, no, this is not my passion, I want to shift my career. And he or she probably go into the writing or something like that. But when a child has learned the way you are teaching, probably they will understand what really they want. Probably that girl will not go to dentist only because she will understand, like with your hands-on experiences, like I'm more inclined in writing and things like that. So I think kudos to you. Right?
Actually, your question, your point is really valid. I'll tell you why also, because right now we give no time to ourselves or to the children because we never build in time. Our children never become thinkers. So when they're not thinking about anything, they can't even think about the future. You ask any child today, what do you want to do? Of course, those who've decided they want to become a doctor or for whom their parents have decided, very few children are able to answer this question, right? And then we start blaming it on AI or this or that. It's actually that we've not we've not taken it in, right? What's that? Inherently, we've not started thinking about such things. We have never learned to think. But if we could think, if we could pause, if we could do things that we like doing, we're more likely to know what we like to do. And yes, exactly.
And I would say that the education, learning today, I would say one of the root things of learning is about do you have the curiosity? Can you ask questions? I would say that all of you who work, let's say if you want to offload work to your peer or your employee, you give them. And let's say if that person takes that what you have said and walks away. As a person who is given, I'm very uncomfortable. अरे उसको सब कुछ समझ में आ गया, एक भी सवाल नहीं पूछा उसने, and he didn't even challenge me what I said. मैंने तो गलत बोला है उसको. So it is a very uncomfortable feeling. So if we expect that of our employees, of our team members, we should teach that to the kids also. And more than asking questions, they should see a purpose in doing it. It is like somebody had gone to a factory in the US at an auto factory assembly line. He asked one person as to what you are doing. He said, "Sir, I'm fixing this widget in this particular assembly." He asked the other person. He said, "Look, my job is to make sure that my customer safety is important, and my this widget is important as part of that safety. So this is how I see my work." So you see a bigger purpose in what you're doing as opposed to just that task. And that education needs to inculcate that a purpose in doing, and how do I belong there. So curiosity, purpose, and belonging needs to come, and that is all human. AI will not take that, and for that the educators also need to evolve. They also need to be developed accordingly, which our BEds are not doing today. They are doing less of. Students are not doing, they are doing less of.
Any more purposeful questions?
How do you design for students design a curriculum for students with disabilities or say diverse learning needs?
Currently we don't, and that is what we are really striving for. In the coming year, we are collaborating with various organizations in which we can create such spaces where we can work with children of different needs, and that is where inclusivity is one of our larger visions, is that every child that walks through the gates of DLRC, their learning needs should be met. That is our larger vision. Yeah.
Since we are talking about AI, the adaptive learning platforms
Hmm.
that we
Yeah.
have right now, individualized,
Yeah.
individual-based learning
Yeah.
is now being configured, and
Correct.
many platforms are there.
Yeah.
I know of Telangana government, at the government level, they are institutionalizing this in the schools.
Hmm.
I think 1,000 schools have
Yeah.
taken on Khan Academy.
Yeah.
Some,
So personalized learning plans were created for them, can be created, but we are going into it. Yes.
I would also add that for a few of the experiences that we have had, where parents have brought in some students who are having difficulty in other places, they have found that our kind of environment with the in nature has really calmed
Yeah.
the kids down, and they have found themselves, which were they were not able
Yeah.
to do in other spaces. So sometimes
Focus better.
focus better.
It's so wonderful. I think
Yeah.
you should definitely publish some writing. You should do.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think vitamin D is one of those vitamins that is severely lacking in our bodies, and being on the farm helps us to get that from the sun directly. Sun's energy is generally like really energizing. It helps.
Yeah, it is so.
Question somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody here said that I wish that pedagogy was driven by curiosity. I wrote a mail to DLRC while applying for my son's admission, and there was a question why DLRC, and
Yeah.
I also spoke about that how I feel that my son's curiosity got killed by the education system. And Ajay started his talk by saying that every disruptive idea is romantic.
Absolutely.
You spoke about equity. You spoke about equity. You spoke about changing cognitive patterns. And this took me back to the time, again, 10 years back, when I had a very romantic idea about an education system wherein the pedagogy is driven by curiosity and how. I thought that the curriculum should not be decided by board of education, but should be decided by the child himself. Every child comes into the school with a set of questions they are looking
Absolutely.
for, they're looking answers for.
Yeah.
So, Ajay, is this romantic idea too romantic, too intuitive?
I-
I still, early in the morning when I rise, I think how this can be put in place. Somebody was talking about children with special needs, and we spoke about life scale. We spoke
Yeah.
about bridging that gap of individualized learning. So if the child himself or herself can decide that these are the questions I am looking answers for, and I need a space where the facilitator gives me these answers, and then I will have
Yeah.
become what I
Yeah.
what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it possible?
See, what would say that when we started DLRC, right? I would say that obviously there were many homeschooling community. They were doing homeschooling, and then there were the regular schools. Now, I think whenever an initiative of this thing starts, while we can have all romantic ideas, it also needs to be financially sustainable. Right? So we cannot swing the pendulum one way or the other. And that is where when DLRC started, we said, okay, we will bring in a bit of that here and a bit of that here. And slowly now, as we see with the advent of AI, we will swing a bit towards that, because when you talk about the problem-based learning, it is about questioning. It is about driving your questions driving your learning, as opposed to any syllabus or curriculum driving your learning. Yet there has to be a structure for that madness. And there has to be a structure and a guide for that madness, and that is really what we say is the DLRC's USP, is that there is a structure to the madness that exists there, where kids are mad about learning. I would say that one of the best quotations that came from a student who graduated in 12th had come to DLRC in 11th from SSC, and she shared with us. She said, "Ajay sir and Mona ma'am, I've never studied so hard in my life. Yet these 2 years were my most rewarding years of life of learning." And coming from an SSC school, I imagine. So what I'm saying is that it is really about creating those experiences. So the education is about an experience, and in that experience you gain skills. You become a more confident and an empathetic human being. So you're coming out not only for yourself but for the society, and that is really what we are looking at. So AI or no AI, technology will come. आज AI है, कल कोई और technology आएगी. The question is, can we focus on that heart and the hand part of it? Head पे अगर नहीं भी किया focus ना, the world is out there to remind you कि अच्छा कितना marks मिला, कितना किया, क्या नहीं किया. There is a world out there, but nobody will question your development of the heart and the skills, right?
So,
Consciously.
yeah, in our vision statement, we write like, so we have created three categories of vision for DLRC. One is learners, so which the vision is that we will have more inquiry driven learners. So just like, so we are moving in that direction. The second part is the ecology, that how we all need to become, we all need to know our ecological address. That's such a beautiful way to think about where we are living, how we're living, and all of that, living with our environment. And the third one is building of community, and that the whole idea of building a community is to be happy. Ultimately what matters is just this. We cannot take anything with us. We'll only leave behind everything that we acquired. And if we are spending our entire life in just acquiring, the more we acquire, the more we leave behind. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think I really should compliment you both because there are other institutions that we know in Pune who started with a very similar concept, in terms of curiosity and building and things like that. But over the years, I think the parents corrupted them. They gave way.
Parents what?
Parents corrupted them.
Parents corrupted them.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of us have a pattern of approach. अच्छा यहाँ नहीं मिल रहा है, वहाँ मिल रहा है. So I really do appreciate you and actually being the catalyst of change and remaining uncorrupted. Because the system around you at times may just
One of
not
the
allow
biggest
you.
reasons for that is because we have a beautiful community. I think that is one thing, and all those who come to DLRC will probably understand this. When we build a community, parents start to think beyond that one little thing of the classroom. Classroom is a very, very small ecosystem, right? In a much larger space that we are all in. And once you become part of that community where you see how children are learning, you get to know the founders, the facilitators up close and personal. Then you build conviction.
And also, I would say that because of that, when we enroll, when kids come for enrollment, parents ask, "Will my kid
Yeah.
adapt?"
That triangle thing is very important at DLRC.
So, will my kid adapt? I look at them in the eye and say, "It's not about your kid. Can
It's
you
about
adapt?"
Absolutely.
And-
It's always,
Yeah.
you know,
DLRC for parents.
We do. So, this, where it comes from, I'll tell you. When Anjali was very
Oh my
young,
God, yeah.
and when we were in Delhi in 2005, we took her to Mirambika school. And you might have heard, yes. So, and Sulochana Didi, who was a principal at that time, she got us both in and she interviewed us. I thought I'm going to die because of the strictness with which she was. And she said, I never need to interview the child. You only need to interview the parents. Exam से parents का होना चाहिए admission time में, everything about the family. Yeah.
And I will also, to add on to that, one time she called us in the school because our daughter was not doing something, and we were like happily going out, ठीक है ना, बच्चे के बारे में हमसे क्या है? Oh my God, we came out of it like hanging our head in shame. She said कि नहीं, बच्चे में कुछ नहीं है,
सब तुम लोग की
सब
गलती है.
तुम्हारी गलती है. Go and see what you are doing in your house. And उस समय तो बहुत गुस्सा आया. But now when we reflect back,
It's true though.
it's so true, so true.
We are
So,
always
yeah.
role modeling, right? Yeah.
It is so true. So,
A
and
lot of change actually lies in the parents' side,
it does.
which are born in certain time
Correct.
with certain value system and
Correct.
certain realities. But now we have to change that part there. So I think that's a
See, that is
bigger challenge.
there's our philosophy, right? Our philosophy is that equilateral triangle. The two sides are the parent and the child. The third is the facilitator. And the reason why equilateral triangle is so stable is because all sides are equal. That means that the 2/3 need to carry equal weight with support from the facilitator.
Yeah.
So, and that
So we say without a triangle, it's only an angle, which means it's only a perspective.
So it is, right? And as I would say, as educators, we tell parents and also students that we need to be uncomfortable with the status quo. We need to constantly think and say, okay, how can we be 10 steps ahead of what the world is out there? Right, so
with this, I think we'll bring this conversation on the stage to a close, and then we remain open to some chai pe charcha. Please feel free for that. Thank you so much, Ajay and Mona, for this wonderful time spent here this morning, and to everyone who's come here on this weekend morning. Hope you enjoyed the discussion